The ground-penetrating radar, SAR, scans of the Giza Plateau by Biondi, Malanga and May have sparked significant controversy, not only in archaeological circles, but also within, well, surprisingly enough, the alternative research community. But let's have a look at why and what is the potential of this discovery and the effect that it may have on us. The mainstream media have not been unified. They are talking about fake news on one side, while others are willing to keep an open mind and are keen to examine the potential of the findings. Here is an extract from the I-24 News, which is a news channel that claims to be an international news network bringing unfiltered, unbiased global news and updates in real time. And based on the report that they did on this subject, I actually believe them. So here's some clips.
Italian and Scottish researchers, mainly from the University of Pisa, conducted advanced high-frequency radar mapping under Egypt's famous pyramids. They claim to have discovered wells, caverns, and shafts that are more than 2,000 feet underground. If accurate, it changes the face of history as we know it.
So what they discovered, basically, they sent some pictures coming from the satellite from space. They managed to get some data from the infrastructure that is beneath the soil, beneath the ground. And what they discover is, if you want spiral hallways, I don't know how many of them, but that could lead maybe to an hypothesis, a thesis that maybe we have there an ancient technology.
Wow.
They reconstructed from the data that they collected from the photographs that they had from the satellite from space. So the reconstruction with the 3D model with AI and all the newest technology that we have, if we are willing to think that the ancient civilization were not so primitive, and maybe they knew things that we also are discovering them today. And maybe the history is not a linear history, but goes more in how we call it spiral
right.
history. So maybe this ancient civilization, whether it was the ancient Egyptian or even a prior civilization to the ancient Egyptian, used the solar energy or a different kind of energy that we are not aware of it today. We have to open this question.
So I used those clips because this was actually quite a nice introduction to this whole thing. But now we should look a little bit more at the claims that have been made and where it all came from. In the early 2020s, a team led by Italian researchers Biondi and Malaga conducted ground-penetrating radar scans at the Giza Plateau. They claimed to have discovered previously unknown chambers and tunnels beneath the Great Pyramid. They later went on to expand their study to cover the Pyramid of Khufu and its nearby shafts. Their findings suggest the existence of 1. Major cavities and structures, both within the two pyramids being scanned, as well as massive underground structures. 2. A network of tunnels connecting major structures on the Giza Plateau. 3. The possibility that the chambers they believe they've found through these scans may contain previously unknown artifacts of either the dynastic Egyptians or of a much older epoch referred to as the Before Times or Zep Tepi. 4. There's evidence of massive underground structures predating conventional archaeological timelines, which may contain advanced technological items and have advanced technological purposes in their own right. By that, it means that the structure itself is a machine. So there's a big divide in the opinion regarding the findings that have been made. Those who support the claims are at best open-minded to further study, and they seem to accept that the researchers used advanced SAR technology that could theoretically detect subsurface anomalies, that the data so far seems to be compelling, and that the findings align with certain alternative theories about ancient prehistoric civilizations. Of course, the name Atlantis gets tossed around quite a lot. But those against the claims say that mainstream archaeologists have been questioning this methodology and the data interpretation, so it must be fake. They say lack of peer-reviewed publications in established journals doesn't exist, so it can't be real. Or they say the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities has not officially validated these findings, so obviously it's untrue. And some who accept the technology used but still don't like the idea say that natural geological formations can sometimes be misinterpreted as artificial structures. So what does all this mean from a bigger perspective? Well, if verified, these discoveries would potentially rewrite significant portions of ancient Egyptian history and possibly also human history in general. The established archaeological institutions that exist today have a great reluctance to investigate the more revolutionary claims and tend to just write them off. This controversy highlights the tension between technological innovation in archaeology and the field's unnecessarily cautious approach to extraordinary claims that could fundamentally alter our understanding of ancient civilizations. What are the potential implications if these findings were to be proven to be accurate? The implications would be somewhat profound in multiple ways. First of all, there's the archaeological implications, which include rewriting Egyptian chronology. We might need to consider the timeline of Egyptian technological development and possibly the age of the Sphinx and the pyramids, or whether or not the ancient Egyptians inherited some of this and just made the most of it. Second thing is that we might have to acknowledge the hidden chambers. The confirmation of previously unknown chambers could lead to the discovery of new artifacts, new texts, even new technologies that have remained sealed for millennia. Then there's the possibility of advanced ancient engineering. The tunnels and chambers would demonstrate even more sophisticated engineering capabilities than currently attributed to even the Great Pyramid. Then there's the concept of lost knowledge. These structures might contain information about construction techniques or astronomical knowledge or even ancient cultural practices that have not previously been documented and would give us greater insight into either the dynastic Egyptians or, if there were an earlier civilization, then possibly that. There's the historical understanding that it affects, the interconnectedness of structures. So a confirmed network of tunnels between monuments would suggest a more unified architectural plan for the Giza complex than was previously understood. If the findings were to be verified, it would inevitably lead to a re-evaluation of the purpose of these structures. We might gain new insights into the intended purpose, and it could be beyond their recognized funerary roles. Then there's the cultural continuity concept. Evidence might emerge showing that greater continuity or sudden changes between different periods of Egyptian civilization or prior to Egyptian civilization existed. So by that, I mean that what we find is not culturally consistent with what we understand to be the dynastic Egyptian civilization. We can also look at scientific and technological impacts that these findings would have if they were proved to be correct. So not only would it be the validation of SAR technology, which to my mind has already been proved, but if it were generally accepted, then it would be recognized as a powerful archaeological tool, potentially leading to its expanded use globally. Then there's the potential for a changed approach with archaeological research methods, which would include the need to develop new techniques, which would be much less invasive for archaeological excavation purposes. What this means is that we want to see what's in there, but we don't want to do any damage in order to find out what's under the Giza Plateau. The next topic for consideration is the cross-disciplinary collaboration, and this is one that's been needed for a very long time. Even though the world has already been building up to this with the controversy around the Sphinx, since different scientific fields had formed different opinions based on the evidence provided, going forward, this clearly necessitates greater cooperation between archaeologists, geologists, engineers, and other specialists. Then there's the potential for any advanced technology that has been found at the sites. Well, it would need to be evaluated and reverse engineered so we can truly understand it. This would lead to new technologies being made available, and one would hope that these technologies will not be oriented around war, but rather for the betterment of humanity as a whole. I can only theorize what these technologies may be used for, but that would be for another episode. And how might this all impact us, the people, the people of the world, or even just the people of Egypt? Well, there are three aspects to consider for this. First, the cultural side. Secondly, public interest and demand for more information. And lastly, the rewriting of history books. As I just mentioned, there would be a spike in new technologies. It could be good, or in the hands of the military, it could be bad, very bad. In my personal opinion, there have to date been gatekeepers who, when such technology is found, whether by accident or intention, it is protected and it is, let's say, secreted away so that the military machines of the world don't get their hands on it. But that is my opinion. Another thing to consider is tourism. As if Egypt isn't already overwhelmed by tourism, it's going to get even more intense. Because of that, they will need to implement more controls, prices will get higher, and it's more likely that there'll be more mechanisms put in place for, let's call it, educational entertainment. And of course, less opportunities for the independent researcher. There will be new areas identified, locations that people will want to visit, but then that puts even more demand on Egypt to make such places ready. So by that I mean the artifacts need to be protected and it needs to be safe for the tourists. Egypt will inevitably see a massive increase in revenue and with it a massive increase in responsibility. I believe they will need to look to the world to get more involved in uncovering these findings, and they'll need a new approach to the management of their heritage. Mind you, I should say our heritage, because really it's the whole world that's interested in this. It's humanity's heritage. Fortunately, the tremendous public interest would drive funding for further research and archaeological preservation, one would hope. But as for rewriting the history of prehistoric humanity, well, that'll be a bit of a challenge for those who are trying to put the pieces of the evidence puzzle together. Will they put the puzzle together correctly, Or will they misinterpret some of these bits of the puzzle that they find? So, assuming what's found proves to be an advanced civilization, was it prior to the dynastic Egyptians? And did they inherit the ruins of an older culture? In which case it would push back the timeline for complex organized civilizations capable of monumental architecture in much the same way that Göbekli Tepe has, but this time it would not be possible to claim that it was only hunter-gatherers. We also need to start looking more closely at mythology. It might put a whole different perspective on some of the myths of the world, because maybe some of those myths weren't actually myths. And yes, we may have distortions from the original that is inevitable with the telephone kind of chat mentality of it going from one generation and whispered to another generation and whispered to another generation. But there could be kernels of truth in the mythology. There's also the unification of worldwide knowledge, i.e. the prehistoric knowledge, which has been hinted at by many of the independent researchers, but not accepted by the archaeological community. So the commonality between many Egyptian and other ancient sites suggests previously unknown knowledge transfer networks between early civilizations, rather than the current perspective of independent parallel development of advanced concepts. Even though some of these ancient sites differ in timeline, it certainly looks like many of them have a common origin. We then need to look at the cultural continuity gaps. If these structures predate known Egyptian dynasties, it raises questions about cultural gaps or missing civilizations from our historical record, and as I said earlier, will require the rewriting of history. We may find that there's additional astronomical knowledge that is found within these structures. The precise alignments often found in Egyptian monuments might stretch back even further, indicating more sophisticated prehistoric understandings of celestial mechanics. Then we have historical discontinuities. Could they provide evidence for the lost periods of human development, or explain certain technological and cultural discontinuities in the archaeological record, as put forward by the theories of Graham Hancock? So the confirmation of these findings would represent a serious paradigm shift in archaeology and anthropology, potentially requiring substantial revisions to the conventional narrative of human, cultural, and technological development. This explains why the evidence is subjected to such intense scrutiny and why the debate generates such passionate responses from both traditional and alternative researchers.